This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. Wayne Barrett once wrote in the Village Voice that Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, in her determination to get New York City the money due it after 9/11, was like a tiger in the House. I think she's been a tiger in the House of Representatives for the last 20 years on all the issues that she's championed, and they are many, all written to protect our rights and freedom. And I'm so pleased that she's my guest today.
Well, I'm so pleased to be with you, Ronnie, and I remember with such fondness our years and days together on the great City Council of New York.
We did. We served together, and that was quite an experience, I guess.
Yeah,
were you surprised when you got to the House?
Well, I think that when you're on the City Council, you can see the power of federal government. And after 12 years of former President Reagan and Bush, I could see that we couldn't do anything. Yeah. All we were doing was cutting education, cutting health care, absolutely nothing for housing. So you are very aware of the federal role and how important a federal president and party is for urban areas and progressive centers and cities like New York City. Mm. And so when I ran for office, because I realized you had to change that. If you wanted to change the funding formulas, I remember I put out a piece, we did a study that said that federal aid to the city of New York had been cut by 75%. And it was almost an unbelievable number. And when I put the report out, I thought, oh, everybody's going to attack me on it. They're going to say it's not true. Well, it was absolutely true. And I'll remember the day that I announced, you were probably there. It was the day of the Casey decision.
Right.
And all the great female leaders that were your best friends. Bella was there, and Geraldine Ferraro and Liz Holtzman. And we were standing there, and we were getting the court case coming in on the facts, and we were sitting there reading the court case, and a lot of city council members and
the Casey case,
it rolled back one of the pillars of Roe, and so I thought, my goodness, they're cutting all the aid, they're rolling back a woman's right to choose. We've got to do something about it. I called my husband, we talked about it. I went out on the steps and I announced for Congress. And if you don't stand up and try to change things, who's going to do it? No one thought I could win.
I know.
And I'll never forget, I went out to a parade for choice, and we were all marching together, and Bill Green was there, and he came up to me and he threatened me.
He was the member of Congress.
And he was a
from
Republican.
What we used to call the Silk Stocking District, right? The east side of Manhattan.
And he came up to me and he threatened me. He said, look, if you don't get out of this race, next year I'm going to be with the popular Mayor Giuliani, and we're going to go after you, and we're going to get you. And I thought, wow, he must think I'm going to win. So I stayed and I ran. No one would give me any money. They didn't think I could win. I defeated a 15-year incumbent who outspent me 4-1. And my slogan was, who needs a powerful congressman if he votes against the economic interest of your city, which he was, with all these cuts from the Reagan and Bush years. And I remember when I was first elected in '82 to the city council, Carter had just left office, and there was money in the pipeline for all kinds of wonderful things. And I told people that in my first years in the city council, I put up 7,000 new units of housing. They said, you mean citywide? I said, no, in my district, which was the South Bronx, East Harlem, some very needy districts, but the money was in the pipeline. But after that money was spent, there was nothing. I mean, zero money for housing, zero money for health care, zero money for education. And I went to Congress with Bill Clinton, and aid to the city of New York started going up instead of down.
Are you a risk taker?
Well, I feel that if you don't act and do something, no one else is going to do it.
Right.
And if that's taking a risk, then I guess I'm a risk taker. But I also felt like it's a responsibility. If they're cutting aid to the great city of New York by 75%, that's absolutely wrong. If they're rolling back a woman's right to choose, that's absolutely wrong. And as members of a city council, we're in a position to do something.
So how does it feel now, 20 years later, and they're still trying to roll back Roe v. Wade?
It's almost worse now than ever before. And not only are they trying to roll back Roe v. Wade, they're trying to roll back access to birth control, which to me was absolutely shocking. to me, birth control and access to birth control is like having a cup of coffee in the morning.
I thought we always...
it was an accepted right. But this crowd is rolling back access to birth control, and that was the famous hearing where they were really rolling it back in this hearing. I went in, there was an all-male panel.
Oh, that was the moment of greatest, right?
We had tried to get this young woman who was an attorney in law school and very active in the student government to speak, and they wouldn't let her speak. And I just walked in and I said, where are the women? You're talking about access to reproductive rights and health care that is critical to millions of women across America, and you won't even have one woman's voice on the panel. And for some reason, it ignited and took off. And then our witness, they literally told me, I said, our witness should testify. And they said, no, she's not qualified. And I said, I would say that any woman is more qualified than your male panel on our rights to reproductive preventive health care and access to health care. This crowd in Washington is not to be believed. They literally voted to defund Planned Parenthood. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime.
My father was, when I was growing up, my father was a vice president of Planned Parenthood nationally, of public relations and stuff. And I remember when Connecticut, it was illegal to sell contraceptives over the counter, and then all of that kind of stuff. And now we're back in it, and Planned Parenthood is the target, this nice, and wonderful organization.
1 in 5 women get their basic health care from Planned Parenthood. It's outrageous.
So when these people are so different from you, and sometimes so stupid, it seems to me, or so much back to where we are about a woman not being qualified to appear as a witness before Congress, I mean, how does that affect your relationships with them? What is it like to have to try to work with them? Can you work with them?
Well, absolutely. Someone can be your ally. That is, you can go to the floor, and I'll give you one example. Henry Hyde was the most pro-life, anti-choice member of Congress, and he literally wrote the Hyde Amendment, which is alive and well and still the law of this country.
But not enough for some of the other people now.
But no, and yet he became a great ally when I wanted to create a human rights division in Afghanistan and earmark $60 million of our aid to women-run NGOs or NGOs that helped women. And he helped me pass that in the House of Representatives. So the dynamic in many ways is like the dynamic we had on the City Council. It's hard to get that fragile flower of consensus, and you're willing to get it anywhere you can. And you may be surprised where you get it from. So you have to be very careful that you, even though you may fight, and people, when Henry and I joined hands on the Afghani women, it was like news that this crowd I was extremely pro-choice and women's rights, and he was the opposite, but on the women in Afghanistan, he became my ally. So you always try to fight people when you
But can you ever see yourself in agreement or working constructively with the chairman of the Government Oversight Committee?
Yes, there are other areas that we've worked constructively, even though I walk in the room and you can see he's almost getting physically sick. You know what he did on Where Are the Women, which I've never seen anything like it. It just took off. It became like a battle cry across the country. I think women were seeing this effort to roll back their rights, and it became sort of something they reacted to very strongly. So he went on national television and called me a liar, which is really the wrong thing to do, particularly when you're totally wrong. So I asked for a point of personal privilege to go to the floor to prove that he was wrong in what he said. And he called me up and he says he apologizes. I said, will you apologize on the floor? He says, no. I said, I'm going to the floor with my point of privilege. He did finally apologize. But, and I just put up the panel and I said, all I asked is a question, where are the women? Now, if you can show me one woman on this panel, I will retract my statement and apologize immediately. But there is no woman on this panel. So you calling me a liar is completely and totally wrong. There's no woman. So he got reprimanded for having said something that was totally not true.
So when also, just to demystify a little bit the world, when you go to Congress, and I want to always encourage younger people to also try to go to Congress, is the whole way of operating very mysterious, or do you pick it up quickly?
From where we come from a legislative body, the City Council, it's very, very similar. It's very similar. The dynamics are very similar. The issues are very different. They're national.
Yeah.
But the dynamics are similar. You have to get the consensus. You have to make the case. You have to get a broad-based support for major pieces of legislation, such as the 9/11 Health and Compensation Bill. You had to get
You did that remarkably, right?
that was a hard bill to pass, but a very important
victory.
one.
Absolutely.
And I just came from the Columbus Day Parade, and a lot of policemen there, and a lot of them are coming up, and they were saying to me, "Thank you. My buddy died. My father died," or whatever. Police officers that had become sick. We lost almost 3,000 people on 9/11, but we have lost thousands and thousands more due to being exposed to the deadly toxins and breathing that.
And the bill that you were so successful with extended coverage to include people who were working on the site.
People that were working on the site and residents who lived there.
It
It had scientific areas that you had to prove that you were there, you had to prove that you were exposed, and they had to have scientists and doctors look at you and see if there was a connection. There's certain illnesses that are totally connected to 9/11.
It's another incident where when you question why we doubt authority, I mean, that's a prime example. You remember the Secretary of the Environment
Right,
saying
exactly.
it's fine, go down there, and it's just amazing always that when you feel something's wrong, you have to pursue it, which I think is what you do.
You have to, as a legislator, and I would say as individuals, you have to be your own doctor and your own lawyer in many cases, and look at it and work with whomever you're working with, but you really have to watch the facts and make a determination for yourself.
Now, you must read an enormous amount of stuff, or I don't know how you get all your information, but the Daily News, I think last year, said that of all the members of the New York City Congressional District, you have introduced more bills, resolutions, all kinds of things than any other member. So where does all that information come from?
Well, it comes from working with the people that I'm privileged to represent. A lot of the ideas come from people that are concerned about their health, their environment, their rights, and they come to me. And
It's interesting.
And it's, to me, what's so fortunate to be an elected representative, when there are challenges, you can do something about it. You can't just throw up your hands and say, oh, there's nothing we can do. You can always put an idea forward and advocate for it and believe in it. And sometimes they don't pass, sometimes they're added to other things, sometimes the awareness helps make people aware of certain dangers to their health. So if I see something, I'm in a position to do something about it. So that's a great opportunity.
So it's very important then to really be in your district and to have that those lines of
absolutely.
communication.
Oh, absolutely.
And friendship and everything else.
And with anyone.
Yeah.
People contact me from across the country. You know, it's
great.
amazing. You go to the floor and give a speech, you'll get phone calls and letters and other things coming in with ideas, support. They support this, they don't support that. But it's very similar. You put in a bill and then everybody reacts to it. You know, they either like it, they don't like it. Why didn't you include this? Why is that in there? And it becomes a study document. And as you know, when we were on the City Council, I authored 3 very important bills. One was the campaign finance bill. I worked 10 years on it. When it finally passed, it was called the toughest and best in the nation. And the other was the Vendex bill to make sure that vendors were in fact legitimate, that they had experience, so that you're not wasting taxpayer dollars. And the other was ISIS, the Integrated Comprehensive Contract Information System, which tracked all the contracts and made sure that the contracts were actually helping people. Because I had experiences in my district where contracts were given to build something that was never built. And the services never got to the community. So this is where the money's going. So the community can track it, government can track it. It's a very, very important legislation.
And it's still there.
It's still there.
And it's very effective. I was
And
just the other day saying, you look it up on Vendex.
Right. And I passed the Vendex bill in Congress.
Oh,
so we now have a federal Vendex bill that
great.
was totally mirrors what we did on the City Council.
Being in Congress, as you said, is like being in the council, because you not only have to worry about your district, but also the issues you're talking about are national and international. So it is a very important responsibility. What are the issues that you are, I can't ask if you're most proud of, but your span is so much. The credit card bill, the law, I mean, it's the, what is it, the cardholders Bill of Rights?
That bill, no one thought it would pass because the industry was so opposed to it. And it was the first reform bill for consumers that ever passed the United States Congress. And the Pew Foundation did a study that said that that bill alone saves people, consumers, $10 billion a year. And it was stopping their tricks and traps of advertising it's one rate, then hiking it. But the worst thing they were doing is they would advertise, oh, your rate is going to be 9% for life. This is a true example of one of my constituents. My constituent says, great, I can handle that. He buys a car with a 9% rate, and then they up it to 30% retroactive on his existing balance. He never got out of debt. He paid for the car once and was still paying interest and not getting to the principal. So it basically said you cannot retroactively add interest rates on what is there. And if going forward you're going to raise the interest rate, then you have to notify the consumer, and the consumer has to opt in to the higher interest rate. No one should ever opt into a higher interest rate. You can look for another bank, you can go to a credit union. There are other ways. You just pay it off at that balance. Don't ever opt into the higher rate. And that alone, stopping false advertising and some of the tricks and traps of what they were doing, is helping consumers. That's a tremendously important one. My Debbie Smith bill was made into a movie, and it's been called the most important anti-rape bill that ever passed. And it merely required the police stations to process the DNA kits and put it into
and they were so stored, weren't they? They were just neglected.
Totally neglected, and put it into a national database that tracks rapists. And rapists are usually very sick people. They don't strike once, they strike 7 to 10 times. And getting that data in there, finding that person and putting them in jail, literally prevents rape and saves the lives of women. The FBI rates rape. It is preceded only by murder on the effect, the emotional effect that it has on people that are harmed.
Yeah, and now we have this candidate Aiken, who is.
Oh, give me a break! I mean, give me a break! You can't make this up. I mean, if you saw it in a movie, you'd say this is too unbelievable.
No, is he smart in his own way, or is he just dumb? That's the question. I don't want to put you in the position to say
I would say he's just
really
dumb. I would say he's just dumb. What he said is, it has nothing, it's not based in fact.
It's so crazy.
It's just anti-woman, and it's just plain wrong.
Let's talk about a subject that you and I have worked on for many years, and that's childcare. Oh. When are we ever going to ever provide affordable, universal childcare? Ever?
Well, what's happened in the city, I think, is almost criminal.
Yeah.
And I think that is awful. They have really cut back child care, and yet you and I know that most women have to work, that it takes 2 salaries to put the food on the table and pay the rent, and not to have the child care there for them is very difficult. One bill that I have in on the federal level is they allow all these deductions. You can deduct this, you can deduct that, you can deduct electricity that you're using in your products, you can deduct your 3 martini lunch. Why can't you deduct the cost of child care? We do have the child support tax credit, but why not in certified child care? Right. That would be helpful to working families. And I think also when you look at the federal government and our government, they always talk about the family, the children, but if you look at the supportive services, they're not there. I have a bill, a flex bill for just saying, and it doesn't cost any money, just that you can go to your employer and request flex time to be able to work around
the family.
Yeah, and I think the only really major bill that we passed on a national level was the Family Medical Leave Act, that you could have 7 weeks of unpaid leave for the birth of a child and to take care of a sick parent. And that is an incredibly important bill. I have many people who have said that bill has saved their lives. I have a bill in that passed the House but not the Senate that says you can take 4 weeks of paid leave for the birth of a child. That we are the only country in the world that doesn't have some form of leave for the birth of a child. And we are in company with Papua New Guinea and Lesotho. Every other country has some form of support for the birth of a child.
But now, why child care and early childhood education are always related in my mind. I mean, I think they are. We know that that's what keeps children more adjusted to the school and is more of a contribution to their success in education. But why we have to bridge then, I guess, education advocates and women's advocates, or why haven't we ever been able to bring it to the top of the agenda? I just don't know.
Well, we just passed, as you know, in the state legislature, mandatory kindergarten for the city of New York, coming down to 5-year-olds. They will have to provide that. All of the studies that, and I did one when I chaired the Joint Economic Committee on early childhood education. The biggest bang for your buck, the biggest payback is early education for children. And all the studies show that going to kindergarten to 5-year-olds and having them in school, learning the numbers and the words, increases the degree of probability that they will graduate from high school, possibly go to college, and be contributing members to our society, more than anything. Yet it's skewed. We put more money into higher education, higher degrees, whereas if you put it into those early years so that every child has an early start, and the sooner the better, that's where the big payoff is on a successful education for our system. So I'm proud of the state of New York for passing the early childhood education bill. That just happened this last session. I was in a school in Queens that's now got 2 new kindergarten classes because of this bill, and it's very, very important.
Very encouraging.
And there are many, many studies. I may have one that we did for the Joint Economic Committee up on my website on the scientific research that shows the earlier you get into that education for young people, the better the span for their careers and their life.
So what about politics now? Let's just talk about this. It's going to be a major disadvantage, that's putting it mildly, if the Democrats don't, if Obama doesn't win. And wouldn't it be wonderful if the Democrats were able to win the majority in both houses?
Well, we are definitely in play in both, both the House and the Senate. We have 5 races that we are trying to turn from Republican to Democrat in New York State that are important races for Democrats to get involved in. And I believe the president will win. The last person that we talked to as a Democratic caucus was David Axelrod. He came to see us, and he had all these polls that were independent. They weren't Democratic, they weren't Republican, they were truly independent sources. And in those polls, President Obama was ahead in all the battleground states. And I share a house with Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Washington, so
we love her in our house.
I do too. And so she has all the numbers, and she was showing me that the president has roughly, that we believe he has right now, roughly 245 electoral votes, and Governor Romney 270 has roughly 220. So Obama has a base going in with New York and California and certain areas that they feel they're going to win that is higher than his opponent. And then up to now, he's been leading in all the battleground states. Of course, nothing is over until election day. You and I know that all too well. We've been in many elections where you are really concerned. You don't know. It's very humbling to run for office, as you know. You don't know whether people are going to really vote for you or not. And it is a secret, it's a secret ballot, and so you don't know. But some of the indications are there. I think the president certainly needs to be reelected. He deserves it. When he walked in the door, this country was shedding 700,000 jobs a month. It was outrageous. We have been digging our way out of what I call the Red Valley. We have gained 5.4 million new private sector jobs since he's put his economic policies in order. Plus, he signed into law the Credit Card Bill of Rights. He signed into law the Lilly Ledbetter Law, equal pay for equal work. That bill failed in the United States Senate in the 21st century. It's hard to believe. And he signed into law many other aspects that are helpful, particularly for people, putting people first, for education, for energy independence. He's many initiatives to support energy independency. Came out with
very exciting ones too.
The standards for the cars, and you know, he hunted down bin Laden. I told him his bumper sticker should be "Car industry alive and exporting, bin Laden hunted down and gone." Thank goodness. I remember I was so happy when that happened, because my constituents were always asking me, where is that bin Laden? Why can't we find him? And we finally did.
And the foreign policy that he's practicing, I think, is much more in line with what people want. We don't want another war.
We don't bring our men and women home.
Exactly.
The sooner the better. The prior president got us into 2 wars. He inherited a $5 trillion surplus. They blew it.
Absolutely.
And left the president with a double-digit debt, and I think he's done a very, very good job. I'm very proud of him. I'm working hard for his reelection, and I hope he does get reelected. But we never know. We have to keep working hard. We have to keep pushing hard.
Well, you certainly were a rallying cry at the convention. I mean, that was just great. It was especially wonderful because Mrs. Romney had said, I love women. Is that what she said? I love women. Now, you know, and Mitt has been so nice to this woman and that woman, but you really, and the members with you have been outstanding in your participation and the passion that you bring to this race, because it shows the other women how important it is.
Well, I call him I tease him, I always call him the woman's president, because he has really stood up for our rights.
Yes.
And no matter how crazy the Tea Party gets, you know he's got a lot of ink in that veto pen.
Yeah. And
he can be there. But to give some examples, the Violence Against Women Act, it was one of the first bills I worked on when I went to Congress. Joe Biden was the lead sponsor on it. We can't get it through the Republican Senate. All the choice issues. Now they're going after birth control, going after equal pay for equal work, trying to push things backwards. I did a report, it's probably on my website, that shows not only are they out of step with the Democrats, out of step with the mainstream America, they're out of step with the traditional Republican Party. And if you look at Title X was authored by none other than George Bush Sr.
Yeah,
and they voted to defund it completely. That's family planning, as you know. There was a nutrition program that was authored by Dole, Republican presidential candidate when he was in the Senate. They completely abolished all the nutrition programs for the children.
Now they cut the food stamps.
Right, exactly.
You know, the food stamps are terrible. Carolyn, we've come to the end of a half hour.
Gosh,
it's
so
been wonderful to talk to you.
Wonderful to see you, Ronnie.
I wish for everybody that they had representatives in Congress like you. And I'm very pleased that I'm a constituent of yours, so thank you very much.
Thank you for your service too, Ronnie. It's wonderful to be on your program.
Thank you.
Still standing up for progressive causes and being a voice.
Right, thank you. Is there any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore? Please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.